Howdy gamers, and there's one question I get asked all the time. Eric, what do you hate more than vehicular manslaughter? And I gotta be honest, it's a pretty good question, but it's probably anime. It's dumb, stupid, and also kinda lame. Don't worry though, I've never had to personally see it. I've never played an anime, watched an anime, so you could say I live a pretty good life. Anyways, that's enough talking about what I hate more than vehicular manslaughter, because it's time to see what game I'm going to play today. Okay, Donkey Kong Country Returns 3D. I just played through the sequel, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, so this should be a good time. Damn it! Fuck shit, stupid motherfucking shit. I have to play through an anime game, and normally, I don't fucking swear, but look at it, it's dumb. That's why Jesus never played Fire Emblem Awakening. He really fucking hated anime. Anyways, I guess I should try this whole sending thing out and at least give the game a try. Okay, I did it. I beat an anime, and Fire Emblem Awakening is such an amazing game. There is so much about it that I love. First off, this game is without a doubt best played with classic mode turned on. Now, in case you aren't part of the 0.003% of the population who knows what that means, don't worry, I think there's a lot of you. It means that when a character dies in combat, they retire. From there, you can't use them in combat again. The game still goes on as normal unless Crom or me dies, and that makes this the best turn-based strategy game I've ever played. Yeah, you heard that right, Mario and Rabbids Kingdom Battle, frick you. This means that every move you make actually has meaning behind it, and there are consequences for your actions. That might sound like it'll make the game too hard, and I was honestly worried that it might be, considering the only other tactical RPG I've ever played was the ones with the Rabbids in it, but that wasn't the case. I had to mildly think about what I wanted to do, because I didn't want anyone to die. If you're wondering how many people did end up dying for me, overall, there are 49 playable characters in the game, and I ended up with 6. I'm not doing the math to find out how many people I killed. It's already embarrassing enough that every time I got a new favorite character, I had to watch them die, to the point where someone named Frederick had to be my favorite. But even then, the game was better for it. The looming threat of death led to incredible unscripted events, which for me, even overshadowed some of the story beats. That's not to say the story was bad, but for me, unscripted events in games are always more memorable than scripted ones. Obviously, the game knows some people are going to die, so it's still sort of scripted, but I'll remember that one time where I did an optional mission and met a kid who said he was too weak to fight, only to have Crom tell him to fight anyways, and then the kid died a minute later over whatever happened in chapter 17. A big reason why classic mode does lead to memorable game moments is because it's really freaking heartbreaking when a character you love dies, and it'll stay with you. They all have a line they'll say, and it stings knowing you won't get to see them interact with the other characters again, but in the best way possible. Inversely though, when a character is about to die but then dodges an attack or gets a critical hit, it is one of the best feelings ever. No joke, there were so many moments where I thought a character was done for, but then they would get a critical hit or they would dodge out of the way, and I would honestly audibly gasp. It felt so amazing, and it made the battles in this game so much more fun and memorable than most battles in RPGs. It also made getting a new character feel so much more special, because you don't have unlimited characters to choose from. It made me care about each and every one of them until, you know, I was bad at playing the game and got them killed. There was one minor problem with the classic mode though, and that's that it leads to some heavy ludonarrative dissonance. If you don't know what that means, I'm very sorry. Sometimes I just feel the need to remind everyone that, yes ladies, I am indeed an owner of version 12.4 of the Oxford English Dictionary. But for those of you who don't own that, ludonarrative dissonance is a thing that a lot of story-based games have, where there's conflict between the game's story and what you're doing as a character. In some games, like Breath of the Wild, it can just be chalked up to, oh, I'm just preparing for my fight against Ganon, I swear. But here, it's not as simple as that. In classic mode, you'll have characters die right in front of you, and then they just appear in cutscenes? Now, the game tries to sweep it under the rug by saying, oh, well, they retired. But this kid is 12, what is he retiring from? Drinking Capri Sun? He is too young to retire. Also, it's against every character's personality in this game to stop fighting, especially someone like Sully, where it's practically their entire personality. On top of characters dying, but not really dying, you'll have something really intense happening in the story, but then you'll just take a break and save someone from the Risen, or defeat the Risen in a certain area. It really takes away from the main story of the game, and maybe it doesn't sound like it does, but it can be really distracting just to see someone in a cutscene go, oh yeah, I'm going to go fight, or something like that, only for them to, you know, be kinda dead. And then the Risen levels that I was talking about, in addition to adding some fun ludonarrative dissonance, really break the pace of the story. It'll be really interesting, and you'll want to find out what happens next, but uh-oh, a challenge thing appeared on the overworld map, and they just aren't fun. They're way too easy and uninteresting to boot. The reused maps and enemy types followed by the lack of added story makes it feel like pointless padding put in to waste 30 hours of my life that could have been spent chewing gum and not watching anime. That begs the question of why I bothered doing them, but the problem is, they felt necessary to keep my characters from being under-leveled. Plus, I kind of was just annoyed with seeing them on the map. Don't get it twisted, I really do enjoy the combat the game has to offer. On the surface, it can seem kinda basic. Move sword people next to the other people and they can attack, and bow people can attack from slightly farther away, but there's a lot more strategy to it than that makes it enjoyable. First off, there are 6 different weapon types in the game. Magic, bows, swords, turning yourself into a dragon, axes, and lances. Magic and turning yourself into a dragon are pretty typical stuff. I mean, we've all done it at some point, after all they look great on resumes, but where things get interesting is with the rest of the attack options. The sword, axe, and lance are cool because they act as type advantages, so swords beat axes, axes beat lances, and lances beat swords. Personally, I don't know if that's true in real life. I mean, do I look like I should be trusted with a sword? But here, it adds a nice element of strategy because you have to keep this type advantage system in mind. Fortunately, it's not extreme like with Pokemon in the way that the game doesn't revolve around these matchups. If you have a sword and are just stronger, you can easily beat someone who has a lance. On the other hand, there's the bow, which if an enemy does have, it's vital that you keep an eye out for. Bows will completely destroy Pegasuses in 1 or 2 hits, which is the only weapon matchup you really have to pay attention to. Other than the weapons though, there are also some non-weapon based matchups, like if you're on a forest tile you get a bonus defense point and are more likely to avoid an attack. All of those little strategies are just so cool, and is why when I hear people call Fire Emblem games anime chess, I kind of agree, because even though there's a heavy sense of strategy to it, you don't have to know what you're doing, and you can still have fun. Like, yeah, you have to understand how the pieces move, but you can also just move your characters where they can hit people, and then be surprised when all the 12-year-olds die. To be fair, how was I supposed to know that a grown man would beat a 12-year-old in a fight? However, in Fire Emblem Awakening, just like in chess, you can overanalyze every move and plan out everything if that's more fun for you. On top of weapon and terrain advantages, the game shows you your stats of enemies and where they can move, so if someone dies, it's almost always your fault. But if you're worried that'll make battles stale, you don't have to, because you can always not plan everything out and it's still just as fun. Plus, there's always the odds of critical hits or dodges happening that add an element of randomness to the battles, the game introducing new characters with varying movesets, the death of characters so you have less people to work with, and different win conditions for some chapters. The win conditions are, get this, the conditions you need to accomplish to win, and they add some nice variety to the game's chapters. Oh, and by variety, I mean Intelligent Systems added 2 win conditions and called it a day. To be fair though, Intelligent Systems is a pretty busy company. I took a look at their calendar and I'm surprised they even managed to get this game out. But enough talking about the schedule of the people who made Game & Wario, so back to the 2 win conditions of Fire Emblem Awakening. Defeating the commander and routing the enemy. Rout the enemy, which is the most common win condition in the game, just has you defeating all of the enemies to win, whereas in Defeat the Commander you just need to kill one person instead of everyone, although they are well guarded. Neither of them are too crazy, but they do add at least some variety to the strategy you use. And while the game only has a whole 2 different official win conditions, there are some secondary objectives that help to mix things up. For instance, instead of just going for the main objective, you'll also have to protect or escort a plot-relevant character. Those two might seem like they're just synonyms for each other, and while you wouldn't be wrong, protection missions have you defending an NPC, whereas escort missions let you control them as you try to get to a certain area. Even though there arguably isn't a lot of differences in the mission types, they do help to differentiate the chapters from one another, especially with the strategies you use. Personally, I don't have a major problem with the win conditions, but an annoyance I do have is that on the Rout the Enemy sections, enemies can respawn, just making things tedious. Although that's more of a nitpick than an actual complaint, however, I do get that there only being 2 real win conditions could bother some people, but the game still manages to find other ways to make the chapters unique. I'd argue that the biggest thing that separates chapters from one another and helps them feel unique is the different stages you battle on. Each chapter in the game has you fighting in a totally new map, which is awesome. Each map is different in so many ways, from where the enemy troops are laid out, the type of enemy troops, the terrain, and stuff like where obstacles like walls and stairs are placed. They all require you to go about things differently than the last because they all play differently, which is so good to see. Sure, some of them are pretty basic, but others will be huge battlefields with so many enemy troops, or a battle where platforms sink down into the lava after a few turns, damaging people and shrinking the battlefield. There are plenty of cool gimmicks for stages, but I'd rather not spoil all of them for obvious reasons. Of course, I still haven't really explained why the game is split up into different chapters, but I'm sure it's obvious that it's for the story. Now, hopefully I don't look like the type of person that have played many Fire Emblem games, because I haven't, and as a newcomer, I feel like this is a good first Fire Emblem game. I don't know the story of any of the games that came before, so I'm not sure if they all do this, but Fire Emblem Awakening acts as a standalone story so you can play through it, even if your only knowledge of the series comes from Sakurai spoiling Fire Emblem Three Houses in a Sakurai Presents. Fortunately, Sakurai didn't spoil this game's story for me, so I got to go into it completely blind.
What is this power?
Okay, he still kind of spoiled the game for me, so I got to go into it somewhat blind. I do forgive him though, I can't stay mad at Sakurai, after all he worked on Kirby Tilt and Tumble. You know, the Game Boy Color game with an abnormal growth. Anyways, to not spoil the story of Fire Emblem Awakening, the best thing to do is just not really talk about it, because it's definitely one of those games that's best experienced blind. There are countless big reveals and a lot of mystery to the game that makes you want to keep playing. The culmination of these twists, reveals, and secrets makes this a game that can be hard to put down at times because you just want to find out what happens next. The best way to describe it would be like a good book where almost every chapter ends on some sort of cliffhanger that makes you want to keep playing. The story goes further than twists, reveals, and secrets though. There's also a nice overarching theme of fate and changing your destiny in the game that I found enjoyable. Ironically though, for a game all about fate and changing your destiny, the game sure likes to let you not make decisions, and it really makes me mad. I already said the game doesn't let you actually kill off characters because if they die in battle they still show up in cutscenes, but it's even worse than that. Apart from the game choosing which characters die and live story-wise, which, fair enough, I get that would be unrealistic to ask for, it also gives you choices that literally don't matter. It would have been better for the game just to not give you the option, because there are moments where it'll ask a tough question that gives the illusion of having real consequences, but no matter what you choose, the game just ignores your choice and comes up with an excuse for it to not work. Choices in video games only matter when they have weight to them. For example, the choice at the end of One Shot was freaking amazing, because you only have one chance to make that choice, and it'll affect the outcome of the game. The fact that there are consequences for the question in one side made it harder to make, but in Fire Emblem Awakening, after I realized that the choices you make literally do not matter, I felt patronized and stopped caring. That's really the only problem I have with this game's story. Overall, it's pretty good. Realistically, it's nothing that'll stay with you when you're done, but it's interesting enough to intrigue the player and keep them playing. Where the game does excel with its storytelling is in the characters. I cared a lot about everyone who joined my party and didn't die right away. I mean, I wouldn't buy a body pillow of them, but I was attached to every one of them. It made me want to see more of these characters. Like, I wish I could play as these characters in other games. Okay, maybe not, but I still loved them. With that said, I do have some problems with the characters in this game. One of the issues with having 59 different playable characters is that, believe it or not, they won't all get screen time in the story. It mainly focuses on around 8 or 9 of those characters. That's not to say your favorite background character won't make a cameo appearance, but in the full-on animated cutscenes, only 5 different characters appear in them. That's nothing against the cutscenes themselves though, they were beautifully animated and looked amazing on the 3DS screen. It was always a great feeling when you got one. But back to the characters, and apart from side characters not appearing in main story cutscenes, you're lucky if they even get to appear in a dialogue relating to the main story more than once, which blows because it makes them feel less real. Other than that, I have nothing to complain about for the characters in Fire Emblem Awakening because apart from a lack of side characters showing up in the main story, they get plenty of screen time with the Barracks, Support, and Friendships. The Barracks is probably the most underwhelming of the 3, but it's still cool, especially if you're a big fan of really weird looking 3D models and video game characters making fun of you for staying up late. Yes, game, I know I have a bad sleep schedule. I didn't need an anime girl to be the one to tell me that. Or at least, I think that's what she's telling me. I'm not too sure what the bottom screen is for in the Barracks, but either way, what matters is the top screen because, I mean, that's where the conversations happen. They aren't anything too in-depth. A lot of the time it's something generic with one character asking another something about war crimes. However, it's still fun to see your favorite characters interact, and I don't really remember there being too many repeating lines. Plus, you're rewarded for seeing these characters interact with each other. For example, if 2 people talk to each other, their relationship might improve, making them better in battles together, but it's not just one-on-one conversations. You also get to see different characters' inner monologues, and you'll get some XP or an item for it. But as much as I love this sort of thing, I am kinda biased because I'm a sucker for fun character interactions. It's why for movie nights, I've just resorted to watching Subspace Emissary cutscenes. Luckily, even if you don't enjoy the most questionable character models since Sonic Adventure having a one-on-one, you don't really have to since the Barracks is entirely optional, unless you really want 20 XP. Surprisingly enough, the other way characters get fleshed out, Support, is also optional, but just like with the Barracks, you're better off doing it anyways. In Fire Emblem Awakening, there's something called support points, and you'll never guess what they do. They're points that go towards leveling up support. But it gets even more crazy because you can get support points by supporting someone in battle, meaning they aren't all about fighting. Doing something as simple as healing an ally, pairing up with them, or even battling adjacent to them will all net you different amounts of support points. Then, once you have enough support points with someone, you can go into the menu on the overworld and you'll be able to engage in a support conversation. These conversations are just fantastic. Each one is unique between the different characters, so Chrom and Stahl will have different conversations than Chrom and Frederick. They also all follow their own character arc, where they help to better one another, and they're really cute sometimes. Not to mention you get rewarded beyond the conversations. Like I mentioned earlier, the level of support means that when you pair up or battle next to each other, you'll do more damage. For leveling up, it all depends on who the characters are. For instance, Chrom can get to S rank with Soli, whereas with Frederick he can only get an A rank. For S rank, you get more than just a damage boost, but it's something you'll want to experience for yourself, so I won't spoil it. But along with the spoiler, you get a new character and a new side mission that's actually worth doing. Overall, the amount of intimacy between the characters in support is perfect. And when you're playing on Classic and don't have many characters, it helps to make it sad when a character dies in battle, because you won't get to continue their support arcs and they'll forever stay blacked out on the support screen. Of course, the characters are more than just a tool for the story. They're also a tool for exciting gameplay. Earlier, I mentioned the weapons and how fun and cool they are, but would you believe it if I told you they were even more fun and cool than I let on? That's right, we have weapon durability. Sometimes, weapon durability is needed. I get that, but here, it doesn't really work. For some reason, everything in the game that can be used to attack has durability. Even things that aren't even weapons. Why does the shapeshifter have durability on her shapeshifting? That's like having durability on sneezing. All it does is make you have to check after every battle. Oh, is my weapon durability low? Which is pointless, because it's not like you'll constantly be getting new weapons or having to improvise. You'll just be using the same weapon over and over again, and then once it breaks, you have to buy it again. It's even worse when you forget to check the weapon durability on someone because, I don't know, there are 59 different playable characters. That's a lot of weapons and shapeshifting to keep track of. Granted, I didn't have all 59 playable characters because I didn't get all supports to S rank, and also I'm bad at video games. Sometimes you'll just forget in mid-battle, a weapon will break, meaning that character is useless for the rest of the fight. And then once it's over, you have to take time to buy them a new weapon, which sure it isn't the worst, but then again, a lot of things aren't the worst but are still bad. Just ask American Chopper 2 Full Throttle for the GameCube. The shops are also just bad. Apart from them being dumb and stupid, the way that they're set up is completely unnecessary. First off, as the game goes on, you unlock more and more shops, which initially seems like a good thing. More shops equals more ways I can spend my money, but I don't want more ways to spend my money because I only need one shop. The multiple stores pretty much carry the same stuff but at different rarities. And since the salesmen move around after each chapter, you have to walk around and figure out which stores carry what rarities. Also, something that's annoying is when you're buying a weapon to replace something on low durability, you can't just compare stats on your weapons. Really, I just feel like the only reason the weapons break is so that you have a reason to spend money, because as it stands, that's really the only thing I ever spent money on other than the healing items and master seals. Healing items are pretty self-explanatory. I mean, even Hotel Mario had healing items, but master seals on the other hand are a bit more complicated. Apart from not appearing in Hotel Mario, probably the reason why that game failed, they allow you to promote a character to the Lord status once they've reached level 10, which you don't really have to worry about, since you'll level up naturally as the story progresses, as long as you're doing the side missions. Overall, the Lord status isn't anything too outlandish. The main thing is that it allows for you to change your class along with doing more damage, which is a nice bonus. Being able to change your class though is a big deal. Different characters have different classes like Thief or Archer. With the Master Seal though, you can change their class because certain classes can only use certain weapons. Like the Thief can only use swords and the Archer can only use bows, but if you use the Master Seal on a Thief, they can become an Assassin who can use swords and bows, or a Trickster who can use swords and a staff. The class customization is really freaking appreciated, and I didn't mind that certain characters could only use certain weapons, because it really didn't matter because of how many characters there were. I got to experiment with almost every class in the game, so by the time I was done, I didn't really care that I didn't get to use the Dark Flyer class. The only real problem I had with the classes was that even though thieves can use swords, there are certain types of swords that they can't use, and when buying items in a shop, it can be confusing because it doesn't say what items are compatible with what characters. You sort of just have to hope that you're picking the right weapon. And while I'm still complaining, I wasn't a big fan of the world map. I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of it, and I feel like a hub world could have worked better to connect everything. As it stands, it's just not very interesting, and I feel like the way it's laid out makes it feel like a level select from a Mario game. I think they were trying to make it look like a war map, but it just doesn't come across that way. Instead, it just succeeds at looking really unappealing. But hey, at least the music on the overworld map is good, but considering the rest of the music in this game is fantastic, that shouldn't be a surprise. As well, it all really fits the medieval theme, but not in an annoying way. The music is still varied with the way it sounds. You have some intense tracks and ones used to emphasize story moments, but you also have some really relaxing ones that I recommend listening to if you're into that sort of thing. Oh, frick, this is a 3DS game and I didn't mention the 3D yet. It's fine, I guess. It's nothing to write home about, but it's not necessarily bad. It just makes the PNGs of characters pop out more, which is neat. Personally, I'm just not the biggest fan of the 3DS's 3D. I get that Glass's 3D is supposed to be impressive, but I can already see 3D objects without glasses, so big whoop. Funnily enough, that's also exactly how I felt about the ability to speed up battles. I get why it's there. Some people are busy, they don't have time to play Fire Emblem Awakening, they need to be complaining about the Xbox One game cases being weird. So, while it's good for them, it's just not for me. To be fair, without speeding stuff up, the battles can take a while. Some of them can go on for 50 minutes, so maybe I should have sped up the battles, but I kinda love my time being wasted. That's why I play Overwatch as DPS, just to sit in the double-digit queue times. That's pretty much everything to this game. I mean, I already talked about it for a concerning amount of time, so it would be really worrying if I had anything else to say about it, but it is kind of funny when you think about it. I went from not caring about this game at all to absolutely loving it. I guess what they say is true, you can't really judge a book by its cover. Especially when that cover is Donkey Kong Country Returns for the 3DS. With that said though, I did really enjoy the gameplay of the game. I mean, who would have thought that I can still enjoy the gameplay of the game even though it features a certain style of animation I don't like and a whole 5 cutscenes. And I didn't even hate the cutscenes, they were really well animated. And as for the gameplay, it was great. The different maps felt varied, the different maps calling for different strategies was awesome, the battle mechanics felt really well done, and the characters and friendships between them, along with the story, was amazing. That's why to give this game a score out of 100, I would honestly give it a 95 out of 100, along with the Best Tactical RPG award. And that's coming from the guy who played Mario & Rabbids Kingdom Battle. Also, about this whole sinning thing, it was a lot of fun. I definitely need to do it again sometime, which is exactly why, while I was talking, I robbed the local gas station for all of their anime games. Don't worry, I'm not going to play them all now, because I have a bit more of a serious type of sinning I need to do.